Part 1. When the ground disappears. The city didn't turn hostile. It simply stopped belonging to me. Morning came in the usual way. Light through torn curtains, distant horns, the steady rhythm of people doing what people do when they believe the day is theirs. I waited, not for danger, for the echo. There's always an echo after a wrong choice. That space where nothing happens, and your mind wants to believe maybe nothing will. That's when systems move, quiet, administrative, bored. The hotel lobby felt tired. Plastic plants, a fan that didn't cool anything, just pushed warm air into new shapes. The clerk smiled like he'd been practicing for years. Passport? I slid it over. Keys clinked behind him. He typed, waited, typed again. His shoulders tightened before his voice did. "I'm sorry, sir, we're full." 4 room tags hung unused on the hook beside him. He wouldn't look at them. He also wouldn't look at me. Not fear, not guilt, just compliance. The system had spoken. His job was to obey. I nodded like it didn't matter and stepped aside. Cafes closed early. Drivers suddenly had somewhere else to be. A pharmacy had system issues. A shopkeeper who'd spoken easily with me yesterday acted like he'd never seen my face. No doors slammed. They just failed to open. I wasn't being chased. I was being excluded. The first phase of erasure is inconvenience. By the time you realize it's not coincidence, it's already working. A tired television flickered above a counter selling gum, cigarettes, and things that pretended to be energy drinks. I bought water to stand there without reason. A reporter talked softly about something no one would remember tomorrow. Then the image cut. The woman. Jacket too thin, eyes heavier than the rest of her, standing where someone had told her to stand. Caption: Local woman assisting authorities after landfill incident. Assisting. That word always means, we haven't decided what you are yet. Her posture tried to be calm. Her hands disagreed. Her eyes scanned, not wildly, intelligently, looking for where the story didn't line up. They should not have touched her. The thought didn't come with heat, just gravity. I stepped outside and let the noise wrap around me. People bargained. Children laughed. Engines coughed. Life insisted on happening. And somewhere inside the gears, one ordinary person had been fed to the mechanism because I refused to disappear on cue. Refusing has a cost. Her life had been chosen to pay part of it. I kept walking, thinking, not feeling. Feel later. Solve now. Part 2. Mistakes invite correction. The message arrived on a line that rarely wakes. Not a ringtone, just a presence. I opened it in the shadow of a building that had forgotten its paint. Mistakes invite correction. Don't be nearby when it arrives. No signature. Mojave never signs anything. He didn't mean violence. He meant narrative correction. Files adjusted. Statements recorded. Conclusions encouraged. I didn't reply. Some conversations only get more dangerous when words exist. The building I chose next was made entirely of waiting. Metal chairs, expired posters, numbers that climbed but never seemed to arrive. No one looked at anyone. That's the point of rooms like this. People become paperwork, and paperwork is easier to move. She wasn't there, but her echo was. Folders, screens, names pronounced incorrectly. A clerk sighing because the computer stalled. All of it gently steering toward the same outcome. Wrong place, wrong time. Useful explanation, not cruelty, just process. Process is worse. Cruelty eventually feels shame. Process feels efficiency. A voice arrived like it belonged to the room. Calm, courteous, measured. I wondered how long it would take you to find the edges. The proxy didn't sit. He didn't stand close. He occupied the idea of proximity, present, but never vulnerable. "You complicated something simple," he said. "We're restoring simplicity." I didn't respond. He continued as if I had agreed. "If this closes cleanly, no one else is inconvenienced." He never mentioned her. He didn't need to. To him, she was not someone. She was a variable, and variables resolve. When he left, there wasn't any feeling of departure, just the absence of pressure that had never announced itself. Shift change came. You could feel it. The collective brain switching from thought to procedure. That's when you move, not loudly, precisely. A signature paused here, a cross-reference request there, a notation that didn't accuse anyone. It simply suggested the file wasn't ready yet. No alarms, no broken rules, just friction. Bureaucracies tolerate almost anything except friction. Friction slows outcomes. She stayed in motion, alive, unlabeled, unfinished. As they walked her past a corridor, she hesitated for half a breath. Not because she saw me, because she felt the world tilt by a fraction. Then she went on. "Good. Stay ordinary. Ordinary survives longer." Part 3. Delivered, not decided night arrived like it always does, not suddenly, just increasingly undeniable. Rooftops give the illusion of distance. That's why I use them. The city hummed. Phones, laughter, arguments, hope, desperation. All of it layered into something that sounded like life, pretending it was safe. My phone vibrated once, nothing more. I opened the message. "You keep mistaking me for the one who decides. I don't decide. I deliver." A file attached. Small, unassuming, meaningful. I opened it. No photographs, no threat, just authorization. A line typed the way accountants mark what cannot be questioned. The ledger. Not an alias meant to scare. A role, a position. The person whose pen makes disappearances look tidy. For him, people are not enemies. They are columns. And I had become an entry. I closed the file. Not out of fear, out of clarity. I wasn't being hunted. I was being balanced. And balance rarely argues with itself. I stayed longer than I should have. Not grieving. Not surrendering. Just accepting the exact shape of the truth. Refusing wasn't heroic. It was expensive. And someone had decided I was the one who would pay. Part 4. The ones who aren't asked. I saw her again. Not clearly. Never long enough for faces to become memory, but long enough for behavior to tell a story. They had moved her to a smaller room. No cameras, no windows, just a table meant to convince people they were participating. A woman in uniform sat across from her, softer voice, softer posture, the good one. There's always a good one. Someone trained to feel reasonable, so you say more than you should just to stay inside their tone. The woman from the landfill sat straight, hands folded, eyes forward. Not defiant, not intimidated. Listening. Really listening. Most people talk to survive interviews. She listened to survive the narrative. Every time a question arrived, she waited an extra second. Not stalling. Thinking. Checking the words against each other, weighing what they implied. She wasn't trying to escape. She was mapping the story they were trying to wrap her inside, and she knew something was off. I could read it in the way she blinked slower than necessary, collecting thoughts rather than fighting panic. She glanced toward the corner once, where no one stood and nothing existed except a shadow. For a heartbeat, it looked like she expected someone to be there, not to rescue, to confirm she wasn't crazy. Then she turned back and chose her answer carefully. She would matter later, not because fate demanded it, because competence survives longer than luck, and competence remembers. Back a few minutes earlier, the proxy expanded. He watched her file the way a surgeon studies an X-ray. No fascination, just evaluation. "You assume this bothers me," he said quietly, still standing where the room forgot to account for him. "It doesn't. Complexity is normal. Clarity is the goal." He gestured slightly toward the stack of folders. "People want events to feel meaningful, but meaning is inefficient. Closure is efficient. Closure stops questions. Closure frees resources. Closure allows us to move forward." He turned his eyes on me, mild and professional. "You prevented closure." A pause. Not threatening, clinical. "That requires adjustment." His voice softened, not kindly, but like someone adjusting the volume on a meeting that had gone on too long. "Kevin, no one is punishing anyone. We do not work in punishment. We work in alignment. Situations must align with outcomes." He motioned vaguely, as if pointing at the air itself. "She becomes part of the alignment. Briefly, then she returns to her life, with a simpler understanding of events." He let the sentence hang. A simpler understanding. Meaning, she would leave believing something that protected the people who needed protection. Truth wasn't being erased, it was being organized, and he believed that was mercy. Part 5. Roof lines and reckonings. Rooftops feel honest. Edges don't lie. They tell you where the world stops. Wind tugged at my jacket and carried the scent of dust, oil, spices, and whatever the burn pits had released into the air years before and refused to take back. Down below, the city arranged itself into patterns. Headlights drifting like quiet constellations, clusters of laughter, arguments that rose and fell before they mattered. From far enough away, suffering looks like routine. That was the danger. I leaned on the low wall and let the quiet arrange itself. Not thinking about strategy yet, just the part of the struggle that happens before decisions. The part where you ask yourself questions you won't put into words. Was I doing this because it was right? Or because I couldn't live with the alternative? Would she survive because I interfered? Or because the system decided she was no longer necessary to the narrative? And if she survived, what would it cost her? There's a difference between living and continuing. Most people never notice it until someone uses them as paperwork. I let the question sit, not solved, acknowledged. Sometimes the worst thing you can do is lie to yourself before the enemy has the chance. Part 6. Delivered truth. The message with the ledger's name still sat inside my phone. Not glowing, not buzzing, just existing, like a door somewhere I hadn't opened yet. The ledger. The proxy delivered orders. The ledger authored reality. Men like the ledger never appear in stories. They exist in signatures, approvals, transfers, corrections, and classified briefings with titles that say nothing. They never pull triggers. They never raise voices. They never say, "Do it." They simply create the environment in which certain things become unavoidable. I thought about the woman in the interview room. How easily the system would convince her, gently, politely, that everything made sense. That she had simply been in the wrong place. That she was lucky. Lucky, while the truth sank beneath paperwork. I closed the screen, not out of fear, out of refusal. There's a difference. Refusing doesn't feel strong. It feels costly, and some costs are paid slowly. Part 7. The quiet decision. I didn't plan revenge. I didn't plan war. I planned presence. That's sometimes worse for systems than bullets. Someone who refuses to leave, refuses to forget, refuses to fit. The woman would walk out one day believing a story that wasn't entirely true. But somewhere in her mind, a question would remain. Questions spread. And people like the ledger hate questions. I wasn't going to save her. That wasn't the story. I was going to deny them closure. That was the only way to hurt the thing they served. I looked out over the city one last time. Then I stepped back from the edge. Refusing continues.